Okay, my name is Amy Sindik, and I did my research on newspaper micropayments. My title was Newspaper Micropayments, Adaption Factors and Influences, and I chose to do a survey about micropayments because I'm interested in the larger scale about newspaper economics and also profit models for online newspapers, and micropayments are becoming a hot topic again. Basically, micropayments are when you pay a per article fee for reading an article online, basically like the iTunes model. They were introduced for the first time in the late 90s, kind of when newspapers moved online, but they really failed, both for infrastructure problems and because you could just get a bunch of, information free elsewhere on the internet, so why would you pay? So then online newspapers moved to more of an advertising model, similar to traditional newspapers, but that model has really failed, as anyone who reads newspapers knows that the newspaper industry is suffering from severe budget cuts, basically. Advertising revenues down, circulation's down. People are moving online, but advertising dollars aren't, so now they want a different profit model, and they're going to look at micropayments again. So I decided to look at micropayments through the prism of brand loyalty and uses and gratifications. To do that, I used Holbrook and Chudhuri's brand loyalty scale, which breaks brand loyalty down into 5 components. Utilitarian values, which is basically your needs you get. Hedonistic, the things that make you feel good about it. Brand trust, brand affect, and brand loyalty. And I also used online newspaper uses and gratification scale based on Chung and Yu's 2006 study. So for my method, I did a non-random convenience sample where I went to different classes and passed out paper and pen surveys. And I had an N size of 301 students collected from journalism classes and also economics classes. I ended up with a fairly nice mix, gender mix. I had 57.5% female respondents, which was an N of 173, and 40.2% male respondents, which was an N of 78. Also a fairly nice breakdown across undergraduate class levels: 16% freshman, 26% sophomore, 33% junior, and 23% senior. I did do it all paper and pencil, so I had a lot of inputting and SPSS to do, but I made it through. So I found some really interesting results. My survey was a 1 through 5 Likert scale with the brand loyalty scale questions and also the uses and grats scale questions. Then also just asked them basic internet consumption questions. How much time do you spend online? How much time do you spend reading news online? What type of stories would you be most likely to pay for? And then I chose 4 newspapers that represent different types of newspapers and asked them if they'd be willing to pay for those, and then applied the brand loyalty and uses and grats scales to them. And the papers I did were New York Times as an example of an elite newspaper, Athens Banner-Herald for the local paper, USA Today for a national paper, and Wall Street Journal as a financial paper. My research questions were: does brand loyalty influence the use of micropayments, and do the gratifications associated with reading content online influence their decision to adopt micropayments? And I had 6 hypotheses because I broke down the brand loyalty scales into each hypothesis. The first was utilitarian values will be positively related to the willingness to adopt. That one was not supported. I had a couple weak correlations, but no statistically significant results. The second, hedonistic values will be positively related to the willingness to adopt. That one was supported for 2 of the newspapers I studied, the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. I had some significant relationships as well as some, I think, moderate correlations for that one. The third was brand trust, which be positively related to willingness to adopt, and that one was supported for New York Times and Athens Banner-Herald. Fourth, brand affect would have a willingness to adopt, and that was supported for New York Times. Fifth, brand loyalty would have a willingness to adopt. That one was weakly supported for all. And 6th, that the gratifications associated with reading newspapers online would show a willingness to adopt, and that was not supported. So other than my hypotheses findings, I found overall that over 1/3 of the respondents were willing to pay something to read online news articles, which I thought was great. One of the reasons I decided to survey students as opposed to another population was because the undergraduate students are part of the millennial generation, which grew up with the internet. They're very used to being online, but also they're most resistant to paying for content online because they just really haven't had to. So I was really interested to see what this generation, what their willingness to pay would be. So I was happy with that 33%-ish. 30% of those people said they would pay between 1 and 25 cents, which was the lowest range I gave them. Another magical 3% would pay anywhere between 25 cents to $2 per article. So if the newspaper industry can find out who those people are, they can make a lot of money, but there's not that many. And then about 62% wouldn't pay anything. The New York Times, in addition to scoring high on all my hypotheses, was the most read newspaper and also the one that people were most likely to pay for online. The second most read was Athens Banner Herald, but that was the one that people were least likely to be willing to pay for online. USA Today was kind of in the middle in terms of both how many people read it and how many people would be willing to read it online. And Wall Street Journal had the lowest amount of people who actually read it, but the second highest amount of people who are willing to pay for its content online. So overall, my research question is of if brand loyalty influences the willingness to adopt micropayments. I think it was, there's evidence to confirm it, but I think that not all the brand loyalty components are weighted equally. It seems like the specific hedonistic and brand loyalty values have the most potential to show if someone is willing to pay online. Trust and brand affect were somewhere in the middle, and then utilitarian did not. And my other question, if the usus and grats associated with reading newspapers online would translate into willingness to adopt micropayments, was not supported. So that apparently does not translate into willingness to pay. Obviously, I had some limitations with my study. It was a non-random convenience sample, just undergraduate students, and like I said, I wanted to survey this population, but I think it would be interesting and beneficial to then survey older populations with higher income levels to see what they would be what their willingness to pay would be as well as one of the, I guess, smaller limitations is that for the local paper, I chose the Athens Banner Herald. And I had a lot of people say that they read the AJC instead, so I think I might include both next time. Building on this study, oh, and another thing about doing just the younger population is that they were most willing to pay for news stories, followed by entertainment, sports, and then finally news and financial news, or financial and business news. And that doesn't really relate to the, I guess, real life where financial papers are really the only ones who have had success so far with either a subscription or micropay model. Wall Street Journal, Financial Times are both succeeding where really no one else is. So future research, I am hoping to expand and do I guess, kind of an expanded survey online next semester so I can have a bigger sample size that's more random to pull from. And I also want for my next survey to break the price points down into smaller, so instead of 1 to 25, do 1 to 5, 6 to 10 to better gauge where the exact price point would be. And I also want to include some questions about how people would like to pay their micropayment to kind of figure out the infrastructure as well. So that was my research.